My next guest, he's a numbers guy. Please welcome into the show, America's accountant, Dan Geltrude. Thanks for being on, Dan. Now, you just heard me with those couple of snippets, establishment and household survey. When you go, those are two of the biggest. I could have gone even further when we talk about, average hourly earnings going up because people stopped working as much and they got paid the same. So that makes, a ton of those things in there. What are your thoughts about what we saw on Friday and how does that affect rates?
Well, are we saying that there could be some fuzzy math here, Scott? Perhaps. Obviously, when you have this type of difference in the numbers, to start with, the jobs numbers, they're nearly doubled what the expectation was. So that's a reason to say, hey, wait a minute, let's hold on. And of course, about 100,000 of those jobs are government related. So I throw those out immediately. I don't know what the expectations were related to health care and government, but to me, that just take that off the table, because all that is exchanging tax dollars for jobs. So that doesn't count. But what does this all mean? Let's make an assumption, and it's a big one, that the administration's numbers are right, and we really did exceed $350,000 in new jobs, rather. Well, if that's the case, Scott, then we clearly don't need to do anything with interest rates at this point, because when you look at those job numbers being so hot, and you look at the growth in GDP, you could certainly make an argument to say, at most we should be doing is nothing, which is probably what they should have been doing for quite some time. So that's where I am right now, if these numbers are believable.
All right, I'm writing down where I am right now, all right? Let me tell you where I am. I think that they had one or two ways they could have gone if they were going to get involved with the manufacture of those numbers. Make the numbers look like you need to cut rates to help the man on the street, or make the jobs look so fantastic that things are going well in the economy, but you can't cut rates and help the donors. All right, so I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying there's any, I don't know about anything nefarious, but when you have a survey, and it's a survey, when you and I were first in the business 30 years ago, they had an over 80% reply rate to the survey. Now it's in the high 40s. And so then they have to infer or extrapolate and try to, guess at what the new other surveys would have come in at. So that's also a little dubious. And then to your point about, when we've got these great GDP numbers, which also fly in the face of maybe trying to cut rates, if you look at those numbers, it's government-fed GDP. We're spending money we don't have to buy gross domestic product. And the numbers are pretty stark. We're having to spend $2.50 of new debt to buy $1 worth of GDP. we're not even getting our bang for our buck there. So I can tell you right now, and I think this is why Bidenomics has failed, because I think if you're in the lower 60% if you're in middle class and you don't own stocks and you don't own a house, inflation's killing you. And then you take a look at all this stuff that we just got out of Friday's numbers. It's got to start to make you angry, And I think that's where we're at. I don't know. I don't want to get too political, except for that sometimes the numbers are just telling you what it is. What do you think?
Well, if you do get a little bit political about this, Scott, and you start to look at it within the lens of how this impacts the election, right? Because that's kind of where everybody is starting to turn. I don't care what you say about the numbers, whether they're accurate or not. The economy and the way people vote based upon their pocketbook, the numbers don't mean anything to them, right? Am I doing better than I was before? That's just a yes or no. Percentages and growth, it doesn't mean anything. So, you could try to convince people that things are going great, and you could try to convince people that, hey, there's all these jobs out there, but they failed to leave out to say, well, yeah, in order for me to make what I used to make, I got to have two jobs. So now do we count that as two jobs? Right. And we're doubling these numbers, Scott? So, again, we're here trying to interpret these numbers. We don't know if they're exactly accurate or not, but what people know is how they feel, and that's what matters most.
And how do you think they feel then? I know how I think they feel, but, again, that's why I think Bidenomics has failed. But if you don't own a house and you don't own a big stock portfolio, inflation is killing you. I don't care if they say, like they said in 60 Minutes last night with Jay Powell, yes, it's coming down, but it just means your prices are still going up, but at a slower pace. What say you?
Yeah, exactly, Scott. You got to look at the accumulation of inflation over the last 3 years. We already know that wages have not kept up with where inflation is. You know, from 3 years ago till now, it's 17% or 20%, depending on what kind of products you're buying. I mean, groceries have gone up even further than that. So when you look at those numbers and people feel that they're falling behind, and they are, I think that's the real answer, no matter what we say about these numbers.
You're right. And to your point, we're going to go, but to your point, since 2021, food's up 34%, fuel's up 33%, and we touch those things almost every single day. So appreciate you coming on. That was great talk. You're just the man to have it with. America's accountant, Dan Geltrude, coming to us from Nutley, New Jersey.